Anish and Girish for giving me the opportunity to share my experience, strength, and hope. And so, the Big Book, 4 times they've said that the purpose of the Big Book is to provide precise, specific, exact, and clear-cut directions for how to take the steps. And all I'm doing is sharing my experience on how to take the steps. So yesterday, when we finished with the resentments part 1 from page 64 and 65 of the Big Book, I had asked everyone, I said, just for the purpose of exercise, whether you've done your 4th step, not done your 4th step, have some fun and write one resentment you may have about a family member, about an extended family, about someone from school or college, someone from work, someone from AA, maybe one institution and one principal. And earlier today, Anish and Girish sent out a PDF of what a 4th step looked like at the end. Because just to summarize for a minute, for those who may not have been at this meeting before, we're just going through the instructions for how to take the steps in the Big Book. And what we've seen so far in step 1, we asked 2 questions on page 44. If when I honestly want to, I find I cannot quit entirely, then I am mentally powerless. And if while drinking I have little control over the amounts I take, then I'm physically powerless over alcohol. It says on page 52 that my life is unmanageable. They give us the bedevilments and they ask us 8 questions. Trouble with personal relationships, inability to control our emotional natures, feelings of misery and depression, difficulty making a living or living, feeling unhappy, feeling full of fear, feeling useless, and being unable to be of real help to other people. And on the first day that I was in AA, all those questions I answered, all of them. Today there are 1 or 2, I don't feel useless, and I do believe that I'm able to help other people. But the other 6 questions on most days, to some extent, I do answer yes. So not only will I always be powerless over alcohol, my life will always be unmanageable by me. And then on page 30, I'm asked to concede to my innermost self that I am an alcoholic. And that is the first step in recovery. In the second step on page 47, I'm asked that if I now believe or am willing to believe that there's a power greater than myself, I'm on my way. That's all I have to do is believe or be willing to believe. And step 2 consists of insanity, belief, and power. The insanity is covered on page 23, page 24, and page 30 of the Big Book. On page 23, it says the main problem is in the mind, and the main problem is an obsession that we will beat the game this time. On page 24, it says, this time we'll drink like other people. We won't get burnt if we put our hands in the fire. On page 30, it says, this time I will control and enjoy my drinking. And I pursued trying that for many years. So that is the insanity. Belief is like suspicion. Okay? And why do I need to believe in a power greater than myself? I've taken step 1 and admitted powerlessness. I failed on my power, my family's power, my doctor's power, my medicine's power, my boss's power, my girlfriend's power, the power of the law. Whoever tried to get me to stay sober failed. So if I'm unable to stay sober on my own power, there better be some other power that can get me sober. And on page 45, it says that's what this book is about. And then they asked me to believe in this power. So for someone like me who was agnostic when I came in, the process of there's a process, It's belief is like suspicion. I'm not sure if AA works, but I'm willing to suspect that it does work since it's worked for so many people. So if I suspect, then I can decide. If I decide, I can act. If I act, I get results. And from the results, I get knowledge. There are 2 examples. One is Christopher Columbus. In 1492, he suspected that the world was round. So he believed that if he sailed west, he would reach east and find a sea route to India. He made a decision to do something about it. acted on that decision, built 3 ships, and went off. He didn't reach India, but he reached somewhere. When he came back, he had knowledge that the world was round, it was not flat, and he would not fall off. So he made a second trip. He still did not find India, but on the second trip, he went on knowledge. So belief, decision, action, results is equal to knowledge. And the other example was the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers were bicycle mechanics. They were high school dropouts. But they believed that they could fly, which was really crazy because all the experts had failed back in the day. But they believed, they made a decision to do something about it, and they acted upon that. The bicycles made motors, tied wings, pedaled really fast. Eventually, they built a machine that could fly. Belief, decision, action, results, and then they got knowledge. So I'm being asked to do the same thing in AA, to be willing to believe, to say maybe there's a higher power, and to consider the evidence. The evidence is all these people in AA that are already sober. Make a decision upon those beliefs and then act upon it. Come for meetings, get a sponsor, do the steps, and see what results I get. Now, I was given the freedom to pick a power greater than myself on page 46. And so I wrote out my own concept of what I believed a higher power should be, and that stood me in good stead. In step 3, it was told to me on page 60 that being convinced, I was now at step 3, which is that I made a decision to turn my will and life over to the care of God as I understood it. So the decision came in my mind. The mind is where the main problem is. The decision is a choice that I'm making, okay? And the choices I'd always made in the past have been bad. The choices were go drink, you'll feel better. So now I'm being asked to turn that, to make a new set of choices, to move in a different direction. And these came from my instincts for money, power, fame, and sex. And I was told, and I experienced, that selfishness and self-centeredness was the root of my problems. So they said in order to get rid of the selfishness, only God can make it possible. Now, how did I act like God? I was the actor who wanted to be the director. You go here, you do this, you do that, and I'll be okay. And he says that if I want to recover from my alcoholism, I got to stop playing God. I got to let him be in charge. Let him be the director, and I remain just being the actor who acts. If God says do this, all I had to do was do it. So I was given promises if I did the third step, and I love the promises, and I do a third step every morning when I wake up. Then we came to step 4. And the first part of step 4 was resentments. Resentment came from the Latin word resentir, or the French word, and Satish pronounced it for me yesterday. I'm not even going to attempt it. But it basically means to feel again. And the exercise we are asked to do in AA is to make a list of whatever we are pissed off at. Friends, enemies, bosses, wives, ex-wives, parents, children, neighbors, strangers, governments, ideologies, principles, whatever. Make a list. That's what we discussed yesterday. And we are asked to do 3 things. Number 1, make a list of the things that we are angry at. Number 2, write down why we are angry. And number 3, see where we were wrong. So we handed out some worksheets yesterday. Again, we are not trying to rewrite the big book. We are not trying to change the big book. All we are doing is sharing our experience. That's something that made sense to me. And I wrote it out, and you're free to do with it as you will. So the first question that comes to mind today in part 2 of the 4th step is, what should I do when I've finished writing my inventory? And on page 60, at the bottom of page 65 of the big book, it says, when we were finished, we considered it carefully. So now if you look at Bill W.'s inventory, he's put 4 names, he's put all the reasons why he was angry, and he put the various ways his life was affected. And it said, when we were finished, we considered it carefully. So what I did was, I sat down and I made a total of all the people that I resented. And in the handout we shared this morning, we gave you a little blank sheet where you can make these totals. And with Bill W, we've seen with the 4 names that he had put on page 65, There were 4 names. In them, his self-esteem was affected 5 times. His money, his security was affected 3 times. His personal relations were affected 1 time. His sex relations were affected 3 times. His pride was affected 2 times. And fear came up 6 times. And that was Bill's inventory. Mine obviously looked very different. Yours, I'm sure, will look very different. So if any of you have actually done the practice 4-step inventory, which we shared with you guys yesterday, I hope you had some fun making the totals and seeing how your life was affected. So what becomes plain? If I'm looking at all these sheets of paper and all these people that I'm angry with, and all these people who've done things to me that have affected my life so negatively, what becomes plain? Let's open our big books to page 66 and see what the big book says. And on page 66 of the big book, it says, I don't know why this bookmark keeps going to page 132, but it says, when we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was this world and its people were often quite wrong. I mean, look what they did to me. Look at bloody Mr. Brown. He went and told my wife about my mistress. Plus, he's paying attention to my wife. And he might even try to get my job at the office. Okay? So to conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse. And then we were sore at ourselves. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. So, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. And here it is, to the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander and waste the hours that might have been worthwhile. And I'm taking a look at that 4th-step resentment list, and I'm taking a look at all the names I've written, all the institutions I've written, all the principles that I was angry at, And it's plain, that these people were often quite wrong. Look how they've dealt with me, man. Look how they've behaved. Look what they've done to me. In the 50 or 60 names that I had on my 4th-step list, in almost every instant my self-esteem was affected. I felt like a piece of crap. It may be half the times my money was affected. Almost every time my personal relationship was affected. Very often my ambitions were affected. Some of the times my sex relations and pride and fear were affected throughout. So I had probably about 50 names, and with one name I had 3 or 4 reasons. 50 names and maybe 100 times my personal relation was affected. 50 names and maybe 45 times my ambition was affected. So it says, to the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? To conclude that others was wrong was as far as most of us usually got. Because what usually happened? Here's what would happen. I'd wake up in the morning, my alarm clock would go off, I would hit the snooze button, then I'd be late for work. Go running out the door, because I was late for work, I'd miss the bus. I'd get the next bus, I didn't have the exact change for the ticket, I'd be thrown off the bus. So I'd get back into the office, I'd get in late, and then, I'd sign in late. I'd sign in late, my supervisor would call me, I'd have words with him. Now I would register all these things. And when I got home that evening, or if I went to the bar, I'd pour my first drink and then I'd press the rewind button. And to conclude that others were wrong. That stupid bus conductor, how dare he throw me out? That stupid office manager who didn't allow me to sign in even though I came in late. That stupid supervisor who, yelled at me for coming late. So, All these affected various parts of myself, my self-esteem, my money, my ambitions. And what did I do? I sat there planning revenge. I'd be pouring another drink. I'm going to show them tomorrow. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But to conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us usually got, especially me. Because the more I sat there thinking about this, the drunker I got. The drunker I got, I was not able to take any action, which meant I passed out again that night, which meant I was late again the next morning and missed the bus the next morning. And that's what it says. To conclude that others was wrong was as far as most of us usually got. The usual outcome was that people continue to wrong us. They continue to yell at me for being late. They continue to not stop the bus at my bus stop so I could get to work on time. And then sometimes I was sore at myself. Poor me, I'm such a loser. Why can't I just get up on time when this alarm clock goes off? You know. But it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. Because instead of me sitting down and planning how I could go back to school and get a degree, planning how I could save some money or advance my career, or look for some girlfriend who might probably stay with me longer than a week in my drinking days. Instead of doing that, I was sitting there with my resentments and my glass and my bottle, concluding that others were wrong. So, what is the end result? What will happen if I hold on to these feelings? What will happen if I hold on to my resentments? So you say many other people have resentments. But what about an alcoholic like me? And I've had these resentments for years before I coming into AA. And if I'm one of those unfortunate people who come into AA and instead of doing the steps and just loitering around AA with the intent of getting sober, then look what happens again on page 66. What will happen if I hold on to these feelings? In the second paragraph on the fourth line, it says, but with the alcoholic, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, which as we discussed is a personality change, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. And that's where dead alcoholics land up in graves. Why? Because we cut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. So, I don't know about you guys, but it's very difficult for me to be holding a resentment. Oh God, that fellow is the son of a gun. I hope he drops dead, and I hope his car is punctured, and I hope the dog bites him on the way to work, and I hope he loses his briefcase. It's very difficult for me to harbor all these resentful feelings and thoughts and hopes and dreams. And at the same time, and God, also please bless me and keep me happy and safe and sane, and give me a sizable income, and let some poor unfortunate woman actually fall for my BS and actually hang out with me for a little bit. We cut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. I am so busy with all my resentments, with all my re-feelings. I am so busy plotting revenge and planning and, attempting and making plans and dreams that I cut myself off with the sunlight of the Spirit. And if I cut myself off from the sunlight of the Spirit, what is going to happen? Because remember, page 45 I was told, I don't have the power, and this book is going to enable me to find the power is going to solve my problem. But if I'm holding on to all these resentments, the next line says, for when harboring such feelings, we cut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit, the insanity of alcohol returns, and we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. I have not had a drink for 30 years. If I pick up a drink tomorrow, I may not die tomorrow. I may not die a physical death immediately tomorrow. But if I pick up a drink tomorrow and I go into a relapse, I'm going to begin with have a spiritual death, because I'm going to be lying to everybody that I'm still sober. Then I'm going to have a financial death, because all the money that I should be spending on food and medicines and my business and staff salaries and my son's school and college, I'll be spending on booze. Then I'll be suffering an emotional death, because I'll be feeling all guilty and miserable about telling people in AA that I'm sober while I've actually relapsed. Then I will start to have health problems. I had an enlarged liver when I was 26. I can't see it getting better over years just because I've stopped drinking. So I'm going to have all kinds of different deaths: mental, spiritual, financial, emotional, and eventually, if I'm lucky, I'll drop dead. Most of the time I find that bloody alcoholics who get into relapse, they don't die quickly, man. They linger on and on and on, and unfortunately, some of them lose control of their vehicles and kill other people. Sometimes alcoholics, because of their alcoholism and their relapse, they bring all kinds of psychological death to their family members. They give their family members grief and sleepless nights, anxiety, neurosis, their own resentments, their own bad feelings, their own guilt. This is what me as an alcoholic does. And it says for me to drink is to die. So, if so, what if my anger is justified? As I shared yesterday in the fourth step, and I will use this example over each of the resentment inventories that we go over. Yesterday, one of the resentment examples I gave was I was resentful at a religious person who molested me the day we buried my father. Okay? So, I felt that my anger is justified. Listen, I was just a kid. This guy is a religious guy. We trust him. I'm supposed to be safe in his presence. I was at my most vulnerable point in my life, and that was the time this guy took advantage of me physically, sexually. I feel my anger is justified. I have the right to be angry at this son of a gun, and he's pretending to be a religious guy and telling people how to live religious and spiritual lives. Give me a break, man. But let's see what the AA book says. So if I feel my anger is justified, let's see what AA says. And 1, 2, 3. It's the third paragraph, and it says, if we were to live, we had to be free of anger. It's not a choice. I have to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal people. But for alcoholics or addicts or Al-Anons or whoever's at this bloody meeting today, these things are poison. So, first and foremost, the question is, do I want to live or do I want to die? Ban, I've taken step 1, I've admitted powerlessness. Yes, I do want to live. I'm powerless and unmanageable. I've taken step 2, I've admitted that I'm insane where alcohol is concerned. And I'm admitting I don't have the power, and I'm willing to believe a higher power can restore me to sanity. In step 3, I've made a decision to turn my thinking and my actions over to the care of this higher power. I've agreed to stop being the director and follow God's will, or attempt to follow God's will. I'm starting to say a prayer to that effect. I've sat down as you people from AA have instructed me, and I have written down my resentments, and I've seen what wrongs people have done to me, and I've looked at the various areas of my life, and some of them, there's some really nasty people. And they really did me a lot of wrong. So, unfortunately, there was no fourth column for those who came in late. There was no my part in the big book. It's whom am I angry at, what did they do, how did I got affected, period. If you can find a big book with a fourth column in it, I'd be happy to admit that I'm wrong. And, as I said, I'll eat your copy online. But they said if I wanted to live, I had to be free of anger. Yes, I do want to live. This is fantastic. After struggling to stop drinking, after struggling to control my drinking for so many years, after finally admitting that I'm powerless and I can't do it, I am willing to do whatever you guys ask me to do to stay sober. And if you're saying that to stay sober, I need to be free of anger, you say it may be the dubious luxury of normal people. Dubious, because even normal people really act out on their anger. And then they use the words grouch and brainstorm. What is a grouch? A grouch is self-pity. Being a really grouchy, self-piteous Mr. Grinch. Poor me, it's not fair, look how life is treating me, blah, blah, blah. Take out the violence, man. And what is a brainstorm? Is that road rage? It's me driving along on a Sunday morning and some guy cuts me off. And I'm in a bloody Maserati and he's in a Premier Padmini. How dare he cut me off? Who the heck does he think he is? And zoom! Stone cold sober. I chase that guy down the highway. Dubious luxury. I might hit him, I might hit somebody else, I might cause some totally innocent people to be hurt or to die, and this is stone cold sober. So, they may be the dubious luxury of normal people, but for us, these things are poison. Why are they poison? Because they make me restless, irritable, and discontent, as Dr. Silkwa told us on the fourth page of his opinion. And when they make me restless, irritable, and discontented, then my mind tells me, have a drink. You'll feel better. So for me, this is poison because if I'm going to take a drink, I'm going to die. But an alcoholic like me, the first question that comes to mind is, so what's wrong with a little poison? I mean, come on, man. Everybody has, every medication that we have, it says over there, you know, if you take this in excessive quantities, this is poisonous. So every medicine that we take for coughs and colds and God knows what is already poison. So what's wrong with a little of poison? Let's see what the big book says. It says in the next paragraph, okay, 1, 2, 3, the third line of that of the fourth paragraph, it says, we began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. Okay? And in that state, the wrongdoings of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill. So we began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. I'll give you an example. I was in New York, and in 2000, I had switched from I was a director of a rehab and I'd left that job. And I decided to take a break from counseling and from addiction, and I took a job in a youth center. I was working with kids. And at the ripe old age of 39, I was the oldest person in the company. You know, the executive director was like 30 and the rest of the staff were in the 20s. And we were working with school-age kids from India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. Their parents were all immigrants, so they sounded like me. And the kids were all born in America, so they sounded like Americans, you know. And so we had this little center there where the kids would come in. And for whatever reason, the kids liked me, and they loved hanging out with me and hanging out in my office, and dubious luxury of normal people. My executive director did not like that. She hated the fact that she was the boss and all the kids were hanging out with this old guy. I mean, I was just telling them stories of some of the crazy stuff we do as alcoholics, you know. And I was also telling them the solutions. I told them how I dealt with my parents and how I dealt with, basically, I was kind of telling them about this program without telling them it's the program, you know. And called me into the office one day and she said, listen, this is not working out. We got to let you go. This was March 15th, 2002. My son had just been born. He was 6 weeks old. I had just bought a brand new house. We were still recovering from the 9/11 terrorist attack. It was probably the worst time, you know, to lose a job. The wrongdoings of others, fancied or real. I thought it was her wrongdoing. How dare she just fire me for no just cause or whatever it was. And also angry. I drove away from Elmhurst, Queens in a real rage, and I was living in Long Island, and I got onto the LIE and then on the Southern State Express, and I was going home at a pretty good clip. And then suddenly I remember there's a spot where cops hang out, you know, at one particular spot on the parkway. And so I slowed down. And while I was driving, I started taking inventory. The wrongdoings of others had the power to actually kill. Here I was, an AA member, 12 years sober. Okay? For whatever reason, the boss in her wisdom decided that I was not the right person for the job. And it's not that she let me, yes, she did fire me, but she gave me 3 months severance pay. It's not like I was just left on the street with nothing in my hand. You know, I did have pay. She gave me excellent references. She said, in any case, when you took this job, you said you weren't going to stay longer than a year, and it's almost a year. So it was time for you to move on anyway. So the wrongdoings of others fancied or real had the power to actually kill. And I saw that I could not allow these thoughts to remain with me, whether I was sober or drunk, because I might go and kill somebody else if I don't kill myself. So how could I escape? How could I actually be able to get some peace of mind and come to terms with the fact that life is going to go on? I made a life-changing decision to give up everything in the United States and move back to India 2 years ago, okay, and start a business. I had absolutely no idea that the coronavirus is going to affect the planet. Now I can sit here and I can pretend that this is some vast plot of the universe. Let's get Roy, as if nobody else on the planet is not experiencing the same problems that I am. So how am I going to escape from these things? What the big book says at the bottom of page 66, it says, how could we escape? Okay? It said, we saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. So, these are sick people. Well, you know, if I have instincts, if I have a survival instinct, and if I have a social instinct, and I have a sex instinct, everybody else on the planet has the same instincts. So I'm looking at my boss, who's younger than me. She's got a graduate degree from a Ivy League college. She's starting out in a career. She wants to make a mark. And all of a sudden, some guy who's coming from, not even from their field of child work and child services, from addiction services, come in and he's like schmoozing with all the kids and he's having fun and the kids like him. And ever so often board members would drop in for a surprise visit and they would hang out with the kids to find out what's going on. So I can see her social instinct. What if the kids say, oh man, Roy's really cool, it's fun to hang out with him. And if her name was not being taken, this could affect her security instinct. She could lose a job. They might think, why is it that the kids are not going to the people we've hired to run this place? Why are they going to someone else who's not even a child specialist? Maybe we hired the wrong person. Let's get somebody else with the job. So I can see how her instincts could be threatened. And so they, like ourselves, were sick too. And they use the word perhaps. AA is not blanketly saying that everybody is sick. They said we realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. So maybe she was reacting to her spiritual malady. Maybe she was reacting to her fear of losing her job or losing her social position with all these kids hanging out with me instead of with her. And so I got to do something about this. Because I can't be driving like a crazy guy down the Long Island Expressway and not expect to crash my car or get a ticket. Although, you know what? Speeding on the LI is not that very easy for people who've lived in New York. So I need to take some action. What kind of action can I take? And here's what the big book says, and I didn't like it. It says, we ask God, not our sponsor, we ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended us, we said to ourselves, this is a sick person. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. Oh, wow. We avoid retaliation and argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. Wow. So I am being told, look, Roy, just as you have a spiritual sickness, and just as you responded to your instincts for money, power, fame, and sex, other people have the same instincts and they respond to it too. They look for jobs, they want recognition, and they look for partners with whom they are compatible. But when you got it, you felt great and you wanted more. And when you didn't get more, you drove to get more. And when your will wasn't able to be satisfied, that's when you got restless, irritable, discontent, and you got drunk. Other people are not getting drunk, but maybe they are responding to their instincts in different ways. Maybe they let you go from a job. Maybe they demoted you. Maybe they did whatever they did. Maybe they overate. Maybe they yelled at their husband. I don't know what they did. But for me, the danger is if I am cut off. Remember page 45. Only a higher power is going to solve my problem. Page 43. I cannot raise a defense before the first drink. Page 24. My willpower has failed. Page 7. My willpower is non-existent. Page 24. I do not have a choice. I cannot wake up in the morning and say, today I choose not to drink. I can't. The big book tells me on page 24, I have lost the power of choice. I have great admiration for some of the people I've heard in AA who said, today I choose not to drink. God bless them, man. I wish I could say that I can't. My choice has been taken away. My willpower is non-existent. And I have no defense before the first drink. So if I am going to be grouchy or have a brainstorm and trigger my RID, my restless irritability and discontent, if I don't have the defense, there better be some bloody defense to keep me from the first drink. Okay? And now that I've come to AA, I'm being taught, if you don't want that to happen, Roy, here's what you have to do. You got to ask God. Thank God I took the second step and I came to believe in a power greater than myself. So what exactly will I have to say or do? And again on page 67 it says, when a person offended us, we said to ourselves, this is the sick son of a gun. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. That's the fourth step, resentment prayer. Now, the big book in this tells us that what I'm supposed to do is pray for them. Now, when I was new in AA, and before I got the big book, and remember, for those that haven't been here before, for my first 1 year in AA, I didn't have a big book because we didn't really have big books in India, or not too many of them. So you basically just did whatever your sponsor and old timers told you. So whenever I'd go to a meeting and complain about the people I was pissed off about, the standard answer was, "Arey, pray for him here. Arey, pray for." But what? Pray for what do I actually want? I want the guy to be hit by a bus. What do I want to pray for him? And then when I actually got the big book, that was the third edition, so it was page 449. But now in the fourth edition, for those of you that have the big book, on page 552, there's a lovely prayer. And that is just one person's experience. So you can use it if you want, you can not use it if you don't want. And after that, today's meeting, when Anish and Girish send out the PDF with the recording, this prayer will also be included from page 552. But let's say I don't take that yet. Let's say I take only the instructions on page 67, okay, in that first paragraph where they tell us this is a sick man and avoid retaliation argument. If I write that down on a paper, it will sound something like this. Dear God, higher power, whatever, XYZ from or XYZ from my resentment list is a sick person. How can I be helpful to them? God save me from being angry because I don't want to relapse. Thy will be done. Please help me show Mr. XYZ from the resentment list the same tolerance, pity and patience that I would cheerfully grant a sick friend, or if my son is 18, if he's sick and he graduates high school, today is his last day of school. If he says, "Oh Dad, I'm sick," am I going to be angry? How dare you get sick? I'm not. Even if like an idiot he ran in the rain and got wet and got the flu and got pneumonia, I still can't be angry. I'll say, "Okay man, come on, take rest, have some soup, let's watch Netflix, let's watch Star Wars," or whatever the flavor of the month was. So the prayer I'm being asked by A to do, please help me because I don't have the power. God, please help me show this son of a gun the same tolerance, pity and patience that I would cheerfully grant my sick relative. Please help me avoid retaliation and argument. Please give me a chance to be helpful and to take a kindly and tolerant view of this fellow. Or you can use the prayer from page 552, where it says on page 552, if you have a resentment against a person or a thing, if you will pray for the person or the thing that you resent, and here's the guarantee, you will be free. What? Pray for these sons of guns? What do I have to say? And again on page 552, it says, if you will ask in prayer for everything you want to be given to them, guarantee, you will be free. I said, are you guys serious? What do I need to ask for? And the big book says, one person's experience says, ask for their health, their prosperity, their happiness, and you will be free. So I said, what do I want today, 30 years sober? I want to be sober. I want serenity. I want reasonably good health. I want a healthy child. I want a happy relationship. I want to be self-supporting. And I want to be able to do this work in God's will for as long as He would have me be. That's what I want. So what they are saying on page 552, ask them, God, I'm really angry with this lady who fired me. Okay? Please give her good health, long life, sobriety, serenity, peace of mind, happy families, healthy children, fat bank balance, fast cars, hot chicks, whatever. Are you serious? What if I don't mean it? Even if you don't mean it, and if your prayers are only words, just go ahead and do it anyway. This must have been written by an alcoholic. Even if you don't mean it, just say it. Naam ke vaste. Okay, how long do I have to say this? How do I have to bloody keep up this prayer? How long do I have to pray for these people that I'm angry with? They said, do it every day for 2 weeks. And you will soon find that where you used to feel bitterness and resentment and hatred, you will now feel understanding and kindness and love. And I got to tell you guys, it worked for me the first time that I used it, and it has worked for me every time that I have used it. And usually when I'm really resentful for someone on the list, I'll start with, God, please give this son of a gun good health, long life, sobriety, serenity. By the third or fourth day, my tone has changed in the prayer. God, please give so-and-so good health, long life, sobriety, serenity. By the fifth or sixth day, I'm not even resentful anymore. It's gone. Now, the big book on page 67, the instruction is, we ask God, okay? We ask God to save us from being angry. They say, this is a sick person. How can I be helpful? Save me from being angry. Thy will be done. Let me show them tolerance, pity, and patience. Let me be helpful, and let me be kindly cheerful. That's what the big book says. Those are the instructions. The instructions are there. It doesn't say pray for 2 weeks, pray for 2 months. It doesn't say go on a yatra, go on a pilgrimage, stand on your head, sit cross-legged in the lotus position. Those are all independent things that you can do on your own. This is my personal experience that I found this prayer in the big book. And it's not that I found it. It was always there. It's not like the prayer was lost. But it has been very, very powerful and very helpful to me. So I personally use it. I still use it every day. I do a prevention fourth step in the morning when I wake up. When I wake up in the morning, I say, God, in case I get resentful about somebody today, and this is like 6:30 in the morning. God, in case I get resentful today, please give them good health, long life, sobriety, serenity, peace of mind, healthy kids, happy families, fat bank balance, fast cars, hot chicks. That's my prayer. You guys write your own prayer. And if you don't like anything with this, you can even write your own prayer. And my first prayer actually sounded like this. Remember I told you I'm going to refer to that guy who assaulted me sexually? So when I came to this part, my sponsor said, look, the spiritual treatment, if you need to let go of this guy, if you want to let go of him occupying space in your mind, you got to pray for him. I said, I can't pray for this son of a gun. And a really smart sponsor. And he said, look, Your prayer could sound something like this, and this is what I wrote. Dear God, X, Y, and Z is a sick MF, all kinds of alphabet soup. God, if you choose to take this guy to heaven right now, I shall have no objection. That was my resentment prayer for this guy. And I said this resentment prayer for a long while. I also want to say at this point that I had to go to therapy, I had to see a specialist to deal with the sexual abuse. On page 133 of the big book, the authors of the big book, the first 100 people say, it says, God has abundantly provided this world with many fine doctors, psychiatrists, therapists, practitioners of various kinds. Do not hesitate to take your problems to such people. So, we finished step 1 on Monday, step 2 on Tuesday, we did step 3 on Wednesday, we did step 4 resentments on Thursday. Today we have been shown the spiritual treatment for resentments. My suggestion to whoever's here in the meeting is, and we're not having this workshop on Saturday, Sunday. We'll resume again on Monday with the resentments part 3, fourth step part 3, the third part of the fourth step. I suggest very strongly that those worksheets that we've given you guys, you might want to consider revisiting your resentments and writing out the stuff that you have that you're resentful at. If your sponsor's around, share it with them. If your sponsor's not around, just write it out. And you can use this prayer from page 67. You can use the prayer from page 552. You can use your own prayer if you like, okay, and pray for the people that control. You see, it's like if I'm watching TV with you, okay, and you want to watch The Blacklist, but you give me the remote control. And I wait till the TV serial comes to a really important part and the guy pulls out his gun and then click, I change the channel. You're going to jump and you're going to get all bent out of shape. And that's exactly what I'm doing with resentments. All these people that I resent, okay, they control my life because every time they do something, I re-feel the pain, I re-feel the anger, I again get restless, irritable and discontent. I re-experience an obsession to drink. I'm cut off from the sunlight of the Spirit. And if I'm unable to take the spiritual treatment necessary, the day and the time will come that I'm going to drink again. Because I cannot raise a defense. Neither me nor any other human power can raise a defense before the first drink. And that's what it said in Fred's story in the chapter more about alcoholism, on page 42. So if I have an obsession to drink, I can call my sponsor, I can call 10 sponsors, I can call anybody on the planet. But if the obsession's about me, neither me nor any other human power is going to be able to stop. So I started using this prayer for all the people that I resented. And I got to tell you, it has worked fantastically. I have not found it necessary to relapse for the last 30 years. Do I still have resentment? Sure, every day I resent somebody or something for some reason. It may not be a full-blown resentment. I might just be slightly pissed about something. But it does come up. And that being the case, I take the spiritual treatment right away. Sometimes I don't want to take the spiritual treatment right away. You know why? Because I get a feeling of superiority. Because let's say you did something to wrong me and I'm feeling resentful. Look at that person, how badly they behaved. And look at me, how spiritually I'm behaving, that I'm not yelling at them and I'm not screaming at them. So I'm not quite ready to let go of the resentments right away. I enjoy it, I savor it, I wallow in it. But I can't, man. Dubious luxury. It is going to take over my head. I will pick up a drink sooner rather than later. So that has been my take and my share of my experience on the spiritual treatment for resentments. I think I'm going to hand the floor back over to our esteemed co-hosts